Welcome to our brand new guide to TOEFL speaking question number 1. Now, if you haven't heard, as of August 1st, 2019, the TOEFL test has changed and the speaking section has changed. And we're going to talk about all of those changes today together. And we're going to do a lot of things in this video, so I want to get to it as soon as possible. But just a really quick overview. So today what we're going to do is we're going to go over 4 example questions of the new speaking question number 1. We're going to go through a question walkthrough. I'm going to take you step by step through answering one of these questions. I'm going to share with you 2 speaking templates to help you answer the questions. I'm going to share an example response so you can hear how I respond to these types of questions. I'm going to share with you a grading checklist so you can actually check your responses. I'm also going to share some exclusive tricks and tips and all that good stuff. And also there is a free and complete TOEFL test that you can download as well. I think it's in the description below. So my name is Josh McPherson. I'm the head instructor of TST Prep, where our mission is simple: to help you get the TOEFL score you need as quickly and easily as possible. And today we're going to talk about question number 1 so you know exactly what to do on test day. All right, let's get right into it. So here's how the test has changed. This is actually an image from ETS, the company that makes the TOEFL. And instead of 6 speaking questions, there are now 4 speaking questions. That's pretty much it. That's the change. So not a whole lot of change. So a couple questions have been cut, pretty much. Question 1 and question 5 have been cut. So this is the new question order and how it's presented on test day. For those of you who have taken the test before, the old version of the test, a lot of this will sound familiar. All right, so speaking question number 1 is an independent question. This is a paired choice most of the time. We're going to talk about what that means in a minute. But basically, it asks about your opinion, and you usually have 2 options, and you have 15 seconds to prepare and 45 seconds to speak. And so there's a couple different types of questions. There's a preference question. Do you prefer to get up early or get up later? Which do you prefer? So you have 2 choices there. Agree or disagree? Again, you have 2 choices. All high school students should wear school uniforms. What do you think? Sometimes they give you 3 choices. Now, in the new version of the test, I haven't seen this yet, but it might come up, where you have 3 choices. You can work alone or with a partner or with a group. Which would you choose? All right. And sometimes, very rarely, this is pretty rare, but once in a while they give this what's called an advantage-disadvantage question. They ask you, for example, what are the advantages and disadvantages of having a part-time job while in school? Right? So it happens sometimes, but not too often. So your goal for this question, and for the entire TOEFL speaking really, is to sound natural and conversational. I want you to think about this while you're listening to me talk about the TOEFL speaking, because I'm going to tell you a lot of tricks, a lot of tips. I'm going to give you some ideas of how to answer. You have to speak for 45 seconds, a very specific amount of time. But a lot of students start to sound robotic because they're trying to follow all these rules. So while it's important for you to follow these rules, just remember that you want to sound conversational. You want to sound natural when you're speaking. Very important. All right, so next up is an example of a TOEFL speaking question. This is from that test that I said you can download somewhere. This is speaking question number 1. And the question is, would you prefer to work at one job your entire life or switch jobs every 5 years? Explain your reasons. So this is a preference question. All right, which do you prefer? Choose one. So I would encourage you actually to stop the video here if you would like and try to answer this question yourself before you hear me give my own response. But you're probably not going to do that, and that's okay. Just a recommendation though. So how are you going to answer this question? So here is a kind of template that you can use to answer this question. When you have to speak about something, a general opinion for 45 seconds, that's tough, because let's say I ask you this question. Do you want to work at one job your whole life or switch every 5 years? You might say, oh, I want to switch every 5 years because it's interesting. That's 5 seconds. That's a very normal response, but you have to speak for 45 seconds. That is more difficult and very unnatural. You're not used to speaking that long to a pretty simple question. So this is how we're going to help you answer these questions by thinking about using a template. And I'll just walk through this really quickly. To me, I definitely think that, and then you restate the question, give your opinion and a specific reason. I'll show you an example in a minute of this. And after you do that, you say, I remember when, and then you give an example that helps support your opinion. Let's say that I want to switch jobs every 5 years. Maybe I have an example that I used to work at one job and it was very boring. After 5 years, I wanted to switch jobs. Something like that, okay? Then you can also give a second reason and second example on top of that, and give another reason, another example, and then you use for example, and then you can finish everything up with the phrase, so to sum up. And you repeat the question. So to sum up, I would definitely prefer to switch jobs every 5 years. All right, so this is a kind of template, and I also gave the time for how you should manage your time when you're speaking. You can give 2 reasons or you can give 1. It's up to you. I actually like to give 1 reason and 1 example, but a lot of students find it difficult, so they prefer 2 reasons. Totally up to you. Okay, so by the way, I know it's a lot of information at one time, so don't worry if you have to watch this again, that's okay. It's a lot of things to think about for these speaking questions. All right, so here's some transitions, some other transitions that you can use to answer these questions. So instead of saying to me or for me, you could say personally speaking, I think that's fine. Or examples, I remember when I was a child, for example, take for example. These are different ways that you can transition in your independent speaking. Just a couple of ideas. Use these ideas, these templates, to help you make your own response, and a response that you're comfortable with. Again, you want to sound natural and conversational, so you want to be comfortable with what you're saying. All right? So let's go back to the question. Which do you prefer? This one or that one? Okay, switch jobs every 5 years or work the same job your entire life. What do you think? Okay, so this is my note structure. After the question is asked, you have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. 15 seconds is not a lot of time. I wrote my opinion, my first reason, my example, my second reason, my second example. You know, you might be thinking, Josh, how am I supposed to write all of that in 15 seconds? Don't have to. Your notes, they don't have to be more than 7 words at most, because you don't have enough time, right? Writing down notes is totally optional, but I find writing a couple words down helps me focus on what I want to say. Because when you're speaking, it's going to be easy to forget what you want to say for 45 seconds. So these help kind of guide me while I'm speaking. And let me show you the kind of notes I take, just to show you really quickly. Is that, first of all, I just write O, R1, EX1, R2, EX2. I don't write down reason, example, because that takes time. You want to try to save time, so you only write the first letter. You know, R means reason, EX means example. So that's an easy kind of shortcut. And besides that, also what I wrote is that I don't write down, full words. I wrote B-O-R-N-G. That means boring. So I wrote down boring. Now you don't know that means boring. I know what that means. My notes are for me. Your notes are for you. Write your notes in a way that you understand, but also that you can write kind of quickly. New York school, I'm going to talk about a school I worked at in New York. It was the same every day. All right, so that's my first reason. Second reason I want to change jobs. It's exciting. I'm going to talk about my other job in Japan, working with kids. I understand my notes. Most important thing, as you can see, I just wrote down a couple of words. You can write down even less than this. All right. Again, you only have 15 seconds, not a lot of time. So here's my sample response to this question, so you can hear how I pronounce things and how I deliver it. So to me, I definitely think it is better to switch jobs every 5 years, because old jobs get boring and new jobs are exciting. I remember when I worked at a school in New York, and by the end of my time there, I was ready for a change. You see, at first, everything was new and interesting, but by the 5th year, I was tired of taking the same train to go to the same building every day. So I'm going to stop there. But you get the point of how you should be delivering your response in a more natural and conversational tone. Even though I wrote all this out, and also don't expect your response to be like this. I thought about this, I wrote this out, so your response is probably not as not as good as mine, and that's okay. Because I planned this out and all this stuff. But so don't worry, don't compare yourself to me right now. This is just an example, so you can see a kind of perfect example, quote unquote. All right, so your response will be much more natural, and have mistakes, totally fine. But yeah, this is just an example for you to see how it kind of works in action. So now let's talk about how you actually grade your own response. Tools for self-study. Now here are some really helpful grading rubrics and criteria that's going to help you practice on your own. So first off, there is this kind of chart, a table, and if you notice there's 4 categories. And these 4 categories are what you're graded on for the TOEFL based on ETS's criteria. And if you notice, I put a simplified translation to the right. Besides a general description, you're also graded on your delivery, which is like you speak in a calm, cool, and natural manner. You don't say like or a lot. You speak pretty cool. And you're able to speak in a natural way by also using different sentence structure and vocabulary. That's language use, that you're able to sound natural and also use a lot of different vocabulary and natural grammar and all that stuff. And then there's also topic development, and topic development is if your response feels like it has a beginning and a middle and an end, like it's going somewhere. Very important. And so besides this is not as helpful as this checklist that I've provided for you here. I'm going to run through them really quickly, each grading criteria, but use this to check your own speaking responses at home. It's going to be hard to get used to at first, and it's hard to record your response and analyze your own response. And again, you can always visit our site, tstprep.com. We do speaking evaluations there as well. Okay, so here are some questions to ask yourself. Did you speak for 42 to 45 seconds? You try not to go too long, and you want to try to not leave too much empty silence at the end. Is your introduction less than 12 seconds? You want to say your introduction pretty quickly. Did you have enough time to include a short conclusion? The conclusion is not necessary, but if you have more time and you use it, that's actually better because it's a nice way to end your speaking. And then, did you look at the clock at least twice? One thing that's really hard for students is seeing a clock count down. It's kind of scary. So try to get used to that and try to look at the clock at least twice when you practice to help you speak in time. Did you include at least 2 transitional words or phrases? So these are words and phrases like, for example, I remember when, to me, for me. So you want to use those phrases. See if you use a couple of them. And did you speak in a smooth and even pace? So again, just like delivery and the grading criteria, try not to say a lot. Try to be smooth and natural. And again, try to speak in a natural and conversational tone. Please, no robot voice. I'll say it over and over again. Please do not speak like a robot. Speak in a natural way. It's what they're looking for, and it's what native speakers do. And did you elaborate on the topic? Well, you include a personal example. Personal examples really help your speaking because it really helps with topic development. A personal example is a story with a beginning and a middle and an end, and that really helps just make it easier to speak for 45 seconds. All right? So when you give your response, a couple of quick tips. Make sure you connect emotionally, and that again is about the robot voice. Avoid the robot voice. Did you manage your time well? Make sure you look at the clock twice when you're speaking. That way you know when you have to finish. It's very important to get used to seeing a clock. The clock is your friend, so keep that in mind. And then the next thing is relate the information back to the topic. So make sure that when you're giving your example, like when I'm talking about my job in New York, I connect it back to, I want to change jobs every 5 years. Make sure that you do that. And provide personal examples. Again, just like I said, a personal example helps you develop the topic and helps you speak for 45 seconds a bit easier, okay? And make sure you can also download this test. Make sure you practice. The big thing is that you actually practice this stuff. You're gonna learn a lot more by doing it than listening to me speak. But thank you for staying to the end. It's amazing that you're still here. I really appreciate it, and thank you so much. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video, guys. Speaking question number 2. See you there.